Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, folks. It is V
Oh,
the Gorilla, and I'm with my main man, the ALGO Cowboy. We're coming to you live on this edition of Rogue News ESW. ESW Rogue News. You can follow us on roguenews.com. Check us out on Twitter at Rogue News ESW. And everywhere you want us to be. Plus, our app will be out shortly, very soon, my friends. So keep it locked and loaded right here. And also check out our paid sponsors, our partners here at Algo Factory. Check us out, algofactory.tech, algofactory.tech. Trade your job, upgrade your life over at algofactory.tech. And with that being said, Cowboy, good morning, buddy. How are you?
doing good. We had a a fire near me, as many of you know. I'm in the state of Idaho. We had a
Yeah,
fire here
you had
recently.
more than the fire. You had a couple of things going on over there, right? You had the whole Meta thing where their data centers were going up in smoke, right? Is that
Well,
weird?
apparently the fires didn't damage the data centers, but two fires within a week were set near a meta facility that's in the same state as I am. And as well, there is, of course, this situation that is uh, several hours away from the Meta Center. I figured you might want to start talking about that. That's the title of the show, after all.
Yeah. Idaho Terror. Here's the weird thing, and the reason why I brought this to bear, and people can quickly brush off these events as if there's no correlation, and think it's really nothing. There's something happening here now. This is hot on the heels of I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Cowboy, if you could pull, let me see if I can get it as well. DC car. Do you guys remember the whole DC car bomb? Hmm?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you?
So
I can throw that up or throw that up on the screen.
yeah, there
Whatever.
was some sort of an explosion. Virginia delivery van shared as a terrorist attack in Washington, and video of a fire caused by an Amazon delivery van's engine malfunction in Virginia. Okay, that's what happened. Okay, good. All right, so the electric car blew up. So okay, that's what they're saying, but it's weird that it happened. Anyway, it could happen. Whatever, but. We know that this is a summer where people need to be on their P's and Q's. Nothing is by accident. We've had an active shooter situation that also occurred a few weeks ago, if I remember correctly. I just don't remember where. There was some issue over at a military base. These are things that are either may or may not have been reported widely across all media and across all media platforms. And then Cowboy, because this is your neck of the woods, man. What happened with this whole Idaho thing? You want to get into it, and I'll also jump into it as well. Go ahead, buddy.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you what the news is telling us happened.
Yeah.
So basically, there are some kind of stories where, um, you know, some person is upset because a fireman did something with his wife, and so they set some fires. They being a pair of brothers, possibly. Like, there's a lot of weird, 48-hour rule, right? Like, you got to
Mm.
give 48 hours after an event before the real info pops in. But the rumors being spread are some jilted guy mad at a fireman set some fires, and perhaps him and a brother were out there, and they were shooting the firemen as they came out to take care of the fires. And so far, we're seeing two firefighters were killed. A third remains in critical condition, fighting for his life. Sheriff described the attack as an ambush. It's right here on Zero Hedge. There, they deliberately they believe that the suspect. They're saying one suspect here deliberately set the fire to lure in the responders and then opened fire. The gunman, well, let's just say a body was found. It says here the gunman was later found dead on the mountain with a weapon nearby. Sheriff called it sniper style attack, but withheld details about the firearm recovered. Additional searches are planned once fire conditions allow. Kind of interesting that they wouldn't just let us know, oh, they found a sniper rifle next to this body. Like, what did they find? A freaking Rambo knife? What weapon did they find? They didn't even say
Yeah.
it was a firearm. They just said a
Yeah.
weapon. I mean, technically, I could pick up a rock or a branch, and that's a weapon. Um, police believe there's only one shooter of the Idaho incident. They tracked him down using cell phone pings. Why would you be like using your cell phone in any situation like that? Authorities did exchange fire, but cannot confirm how he died. So maybe this is maybe an older note. If they found a body then they didn't kill the person, but the person's dead. It's kind of weird that these, like, okay, police standoff, guy was using a sniper rifle to shoot people, police shot him, and that's that. Why is it a body, like the gunman was found? Okay, so we have to assume the weapon is a gun,
Yeah.
or maybe they just can't find the weapon. So they found a body with some kind of weapon, unidentifiable,
Yeah.
and they're assuming he was the gunman. Like it seems like there's just a lot of things they're not saying, and I understand it's an open investigation, and so they do have to withhold data. What do you think, V? Do you think this is we're getting the whole story, or do you think
No.
whatever's being hidden from us is being hidden just because it's an investigation?
Yeah, I'm getting all sorts of weird vibes here, right? And the fact of the matter that the police chief that was handling this situation was correlated to and connected to I believe it's very, I think I said it's very synonymous with. He was, and I think I actually texted this to you and Velas. Yeah, Idaho sheriff announced that anyone in the area is. It's very similar to the Vegas shootings, right? Just like Vegas, right? And just like Maui, right? Because it turns out that the sheriff that was in charge in the Idaho situation. Here's what makes it weird, because initial reports are saying there were 3 shooters, right, and 1 was down, and it was unconfirmed, and this is from the Idaho Tribune, but it was from a trusty source, quote unquote. So there was apparently 3 shooters, and typically, a lot of times, they're also in the initial stages of a false flag is when the actual truth is being recorded. And the thing is, they found this guy up there, dead. He's got the rifle next to him. And then who's the person that's handling this? Some guy named Robert Brian Norris. He's the sheriff of Kootenai County, Idaho. And the thing with him is, like, this is somebody who's trained with the IDF, trained with the Mossad, trained with Shin Bet, right? Which also is very similar to the sheriffs from the Las Vegas shooting, who also shows up at the Maui fires. It's very strange, right? It's very strange. Like, you are a sheriff in West Bumble F, God knows where, Idaho, middle of nowhere. You're not from a major city. I can understand you're somebody in the Los Angeles police force where you do cross counterterrorism training, and you go off to Israel. This happens with the NYPD. The NYPD actually has an office in Tel Aviv, if I'm not mistaken, right? And they do a lot of cross training for SWAT and anti-terrorism work. That's understandable, right? But you're in West Bumble Nowhere, Idaho, right? Kootenai. I don't even know where the hell that is, Cowboy. But you're with Mossad. You're with Shin Bet. Like, what the hell? This is just like, and that's what makes this weird, right? That's what makes this weird. You remember, folks, about a year ago, last summer, where every other week a food production plant was going up in smokes, right? Every other week a cattle ranch was burning down, a chicken coop was burning down. It's insanity, to say the least, right? So, that's the situation we have here. That's the situation we have here, and this is why I'm just looking at this, Cowboy, in a very different light. Some things don't make sense, and I'm not saying and the other thing that I want to say here is be vigilant. Be vigilant. I think this is going to be a crazy ass summer. I think this is going to be the false flag summer. I think there's going to be a lot of things, and I think people have to be vigilant. Is basically what I'm saying. Because and don't trust what you initially hear, and that's what I have to say about that, Cowboy. What are your thoughts, man?
I mean, Coeur d'Alene, I'm not sure exactly how far away this situation is from Coeur d'Alene, but Coeur d'Alene has pockets of wealth in it. I mean, they've got, just like anywhere, some wealthy people, some not so wealthy people. The median income there is about $70,000, which is higher than the national average by a bit. One thing is, though, there's mining near there. The Silver Valley is known for its silver, copper, gold production, over 1.2 billion of ounces of silver historically, and accounting for nearly 45% of the U.S.'s newly minted silver. So you do have a massive silver mine there. As a matter of fact, you can't even fish Coeur d'Alene because
Interesting.
yeah, the results of the silver mining from whatever 100 years ago. The problem there is it's polluted the lake too much, and it's cleanable, but the federal government doesn't want to contribute to that. See here, there is a significant silver producer, Galena mine. Uh, it's smaller than Lucky Friday, which is the first mine that I talked about. So the Lucky Friday mine is the one that it's expected to produce 4.7 to 5.1 million ounces of silver in 2025.
Yeah.
That's not a small amount. So there's a few other mines, not just silver, but there's other metals up there. So a thing about northern Idaho, there's another situation. There are two other situations to name up there. I know somebody very close to them who moved up there to get away from everything, and they moved to a city called Sandpoint. And Sandpoint, it's a bunch of, the way he describes it, it's a bunch of boomers who are asleep at the wheel. They don't care about their politics. And what ended up happening was they brought in some guy who, from like Oregon or somewhere, he had dreadlocks, total libtard, and they cleaned him up and made him the mayor.
Mm.
And so basically their town has been taken over, and Sandpoint is, there's a little more money in Sandpoint than people know about. Not terribly far from Ruby Ridge. It's not like around the same area, but if you all remember what Ruby Ridge is, that's where there was a standoff between police and I think it was a former military guy, and it was a big deal. They shot him, and I think they shot his wife or something.
Oh, they first shot his kid.
They shot
over
his
some
kid in the face
bullshit.
or something, didn't they?
Yeah, this was like, it was a whole stupid thing. It was completely a federal overreach. They were trying to set the guy up. He wasn't falling for it. So they were stalking him in ghillie suits surrounding his house. His kid is out there walking the dog. He sees some guys in ghillie suits, and he fired at the guy, hitting one of the agents. Agents returned fire, killed his boy. And the guy who's the father, who's a retired Green Beret, that's when he went apeshit. Because then they next shot, his wife, who was holding his baby. Like, at that point, dude, it's like, yo, what the fuck? At that point, right? At that point, like, as a man, all bets are off.
Doesn't
bro.
matter. Yeah,
doesn't matter.
Go kill people.
You're gonna unleash hell at that point. No man's gonna take that lying down. You. Like, what the fuck is wrong with? And this is the problem with government. And government is just an out of control thing. It can be an out of control thing because these are why we need those checks and balances, and we need those restraints on power, because it can be abused. It's incredible, man. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's another situation in northern Idaho that a lot of people, this is less sensational, but probably more important, believe it or not, is they're messing with the water rights. So Idahoans have water rights, and in 2 counties in northern Idaho, the government wants to go ahead and limit their water rights to where they can use their water up to, I believe, a certain amount of gallons or whatever it is. And then they have to, pay based on that, and all the wells have to be monitored and such, which doesn't sound as exciting as, fires and ghillie suits. But if you think about it, water, I mean, shoot, man, without water, we die. And so when, like, all the farmers, for example, in another city called Emmett, Idaho, they could just use as much water as they like with a very small fee. And that's not even using the wells. That's just, like, water out here is, this is a large farming food production area. A lot of the industry we have here is around food production. So when you go after the water, you're pretty much going after the entire state's economy. And Idaho is it might be the reddest state there is, as far as I know. I mean, our 2A laws are some of the best here. And also Idaho is historically very Mormon, which of course lends itself to being very conservative, but now that's, the West Coasters are piling in, and that's a whole nother story. So, it seems to me that, and we're all very, like, libertarian at heart. Everybody I know out here is very much so. A lot of people came out here for that reason. So, like, I think Idaho is 67% Republican, and the people coming to Idaho are 71% Republican. So should tell you what you need to know on that. And it seems to me like they're just going after what could be an independent state that goes way far away from what they want, once things break up. And they're going to try to break our country up. And that's, I think, the main goal here.
Absolutely right, man. Shifting gears.
Yeah, that's that. What else you got?
Well, we got the whole situation with the tariffs on digital tax with Canada, and this is a pretty important thing here, right? Finance Minister Francois Philippe Champagne wrote on X overnight that Canada has withdrawn its controversial digital services tax on Silicon Valley tech giants such as Alphabet, Meta, in order to restart stalled trade negotiations with the Trump administration. It's another win for President Trump as his art of the deal tactics continue to bring far-left progressive countries back in line with his America First agenda. Canada is engaged in a complex negotiations on a new economic and security partnership with the U.S., Champagne wrote on X late Sunday, and he continued, rescinding the DST, the digital service tax, will allow the negotiations to make vital progress and reinforce our work to create jobs and build prosperity for all Canadians. As a fresher, Canada's DST was a 3% tax on the revenue that big tech companies earn from Canadian users, specifically from online advertising marketplaces and user data. Canada's move follows President Trump's Friday afternoon announcement calling for all trade discussions with the country to be terminated. He also threatened to impose new tariffs within a week. Also last Friday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told the CNBC that the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer would investigate the tax to determine the amount of harm to the U.S. companies and the U.S. economy in general. The stakes are high for Canada. 3/4 of its exports are shipped to the U.S., including energy. It's actually more. It's like over 40%, close to 40% of their GDP is reliant upon the United States. So it's not even a small little thing. And the reason why I bring this up, right? The reason why I bring this up, there is a similar tax that the EU and the UK places on American, digital service providers. There's a similar tax. And what is occurring with Canada taking it down, folks, there is a global reordering occurring. And for the longest several decades, we've been running on a unipolar world order. That unipolar world order is coming apart. And I've been saying this for years, where we are rescinding into a hemispherical power. What is occurring with Canada in terms of its trade negotiations, in terms of Trump talking about making Canada the 51st state, in terms of having this digital services tax rescinded, all of it is bringing Canada on a line, as well as Greenland, as well as the entire Western Hemisphere, to be dominated by the United States, because that is the only way that we are going to sustain the future. I believe that the economic planners of this world, especially this country, they have figured out that the United States can no longer play global policeman. It can no longer be a global presence and a global power, because there are other global powers now. We are no longer dwelling in a vacuum. And because we're no longer dwelling in a vacuum, and the only way moving forward, because our economy it's a fragile economy and it's a weakened economy, and the only way this economy is going to be elevated into an economy of strength and resilience, it has to be a physical economy. It has to be an economy based upon goods, based upon services, based upon natural resources and mineral wealth, and less to do with speculation and finance. That's where we're headed. Okay, that's where we're headed. And here's the deal here, folks. Because we're heading in that direction, the Western Hemisphere is going to be a hemisphere that has to be controlled by the United States. And a move like this is decoupling Canada away from the British Crown. That's what we're doing. It's decoupling Canada away from the City of London Corporation. It's going to be falling into our sphere of influence, into our trajectory of where we want things to go. That's what's happening here, because we're starting to understand that the system that's been running on this planet for the last several decades, it's at the end of this rope. And this is what Trump is doing. He's doing it very quickly, very rapidly. He's doing it. Cowboy, your thoughts? Yeah, you're muted.
I was in the middle of trying to edit the description
Oh.
as I was going to add a link, and that link is going to be to an article by Ian Burlingame in his Substack.
Yes.
It's free. This article is free
bring it
to
up.
access. What'd you say, V?
Click the link. You can bring it up.
Oh yeah. So I'm just gonna put it in the comments for now.
Mhm.
Let me go ahead and do that. And so, look, we're in a bit of a retreat. And this article that I'm just posting into the comments right there, just go look at that. It explains it really well. We did like empires do. We expanded, went too far. Now we have to retreat. The problem is that once we expanded, the entire world's kind of balance was created based on that expansion and on the expectation that we would hold up our end of whatever deals were made. Well, guess what? We don't have the capability to hold those deals up. We have to retreat. If we don't retreat, whatever we got going on is just going to die off in a chaotic way. So whatever the retreat, whatever that is, however that happens, it has to be organized. Otherwise, you get a Biden pulling out of Afghanistan situation, which is a disaster, right? So that's what this is about, right? So as we're doing that, the people who would take advantage of that kind of retreat in a negative way, who don't want to work in a multipolar fashion, we need to cleave off whatever bits of power they have as well. So cleaving off Canada is part of that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
The other end of it is Canada tried to threaten us with, oh, well, we're going to stop selling you electricity. Well, in 2023, the U.S. generated 4,178 terawatts of electricity. Now, Canada, let me see. Canada sells to the U.S. 49.4 terawatts. That's like 1% of that. And the U.S. sells Canada about a third of what they sell us. So they tried to threaten us with what is ultimately a drop in the bucket with power. Now, of course, power transmission is not a linear thing. Like you're going to have, certain areas can only get power from certain areas. There are 3 separate major grids in our country plus subgrids. So yeah, sure, Canada might be able to cut off power to an area that would take us a minute to figure out. But in the end, the kind of damage that we would do to them with those tariffs, obviously they came back to the table. I love the graphic here on the article. And I would defer to Tom Luongo as far as what Canada was doing, why we're attacking the tariffs. Essentially, what was going on in Canada was a bond market game where when you create debt, I know the debt is unbacked, and I think everybody here is knee-jerk libertarian, and it's time to start to put away our morality, and not to be immoral, but to understand that the world situation is amoral, right? So we need to survive. We need to win. So long story short, what's going on here is that with I don't remember the number, let's just say an $80 billion trade surplus. Well, therefore Canada can print $80 billion worth of currency. That's what the collateral is. And we all think that the currency is unbacked, and ultimately it kind of is, but guess what? It's kind of not. For us to justify printing money, even though it's not backed by gold or anything, technically what it is backed by is the collateral that is our future earnings. It's collateral of the assets that we own in our country and around the world. We're not assetless, right? Which I don't even know if that's a word.
No, which is true. I mean, we're sitting on $500 trillion in absolute natural resources and mineral wealth, as well as petroleum and energy reserves. You add it all up, $500 trillion.
Yeah, and usually collateralized debt, the collateral is a fraction of the debt. So, you can do a lot of multiples there. But the point here is that in order to print that new money, it's got to be justified. So Canada was using the trade surplus as collateral to print U.S. denominated debt at preferential rates. And this is all coming from Tom Luongo. I don't want to steal it. He did all the work. I just listened to him. But what they're doing, or what they were going to be able to do, I don't know if they were successful, because I think we might have just made that not possible. But what they can do is use the trade surplus with us to print U.S. denominated debt that other markets will buy before they buy our debt. Yeah. They're undercutting us in the world debt market. That's war. That is financial war. So to go after the trade deficit is cutting away their ability to do that. Um, I don't know, and that's all I have to say on the Canada matter. But this kind of brings me to the next question: do you think we're ever going to see a major war, like a kinetic major war again, or do you think it's all going to be stuff like this with terrorism and finance and cybercrime and things like that?
I think this is what warfare is now, man. I think this is what because nobody nobody wins in a nuclear exchange, and I don't think we're going to see that unless you're talking about the most extreme of the extreme. And I think this is the great game that's being played. It's literally subterfuge and covert operations and lies and color revolutions and propaganda. That's the warfare of today, and regime change and all this other stuff. That is what we're facing today. I don't see any large scale global kinetic war. I also see regional flare ups. Ukraine is a perfect example. What's happened with Iran and Israel is another example. We'll see conflicts like that where it's fought for several days and then it just stops, and then we go back to the covert covert operations and name calling and all this other propaganda and all the other BS that goes along with it. But the kinetic action at a large global scale, I don't see that happening because nobody wins, and I don't think anybody's brave enough to go ahead and pull and push that red button, that ends all life on Earth. Not even no elitists could go into their little tunnels and come out alive on the other end. You're not going to wait out the radiation. There's no way. There's no way you're going to wait out 10,000 years worth of radiation. It's not going to happen. And who would want to survive on the other end of it? You come out, the world's completely reset, and who wants to live through that chaos? It's better to go in a flash than to live through that type of suffering.
Yeah, I wonder, if the the Devosians, who are basically, as far as I'm concerned, I suspect them to be Satan worshippers. I mean, they might look at it as a giant blood sacrifice, and they don't care what the world looks like afterwards.
No, exactly. But I'm thankful that not everybody is a Satanist. That not these globals, they all have competing interests as well. They're aligned in the global influence game and their power. Where they differ is how they go about doing it. And the majority of the people that are in Globalism Inc. are people that don't want to see the world completely destroyed. They don't want that. They want to have something to rule. And but then you have the satanic end of it, which they want exactly what it is, which is a giant blood sacrifice, so on and so forth. So this is that turf war we're seeing being played out as well. So it's a kinetic war, it's a global war, and you got the turf war that's happening as well, Cowboy.
Yeah, there's our friend James over at ESW. Just a separate note. He found an X-Files episode that kind of mirrors what's going on up in Idaho, where this guy, he's obviously, he's got mental problems. He sees messages on the screen, and for example, like the screen says kill him. He goes to his ATM and then the screen says kill them all. And then, he goes to the gun shop, he starts buying guns, and, his cell phone says do it now or whatever, all these crazy messages. Well, of course it's the X-Files. So what's going on here is whether or not those messages were actually real. They know he's mentally, done. Maybe they even put him through some kind of a program, the MK Ultra style. And then those messages were sent to him on purpose. As a matter of fact, the active shooter thing, there are all kinds of technologies that could literally make people think that they're hearing God and stuff. So we really need to be vigilant of such things. I don't want to get too far into that conversation because I don't know how useful it is. But, just, man, I don't know. Just watch your kids. Just make sure they're not doing anything really strange. Here's an interesting article aside from that. Stablecoins are becoming a default settlement layer for the internet.
Yeah, I saw that. That's interesting. What are they saying?
Well, I haven't gotten into the article, but what I can tell you is that stablecoins right now are backed majorly by U.S. Treasuries. So the U.S. dollar still the reserve currency, of course, that's being eaten away. But if stablecoins are backed by U.S. Treasuries, then that means that effectively the U.S. dollar is going to have that power. And if the stablecoins, at least Tether and Circle, the ones that are trusted, whether or not you think Circle is evil, whatever, right?
Right.
They're all backed in a big way by U.S. Treasuries, like the big ones are. So this is a way that the U.S. debt is going to be maintained, and I think this is why Donald Trump is very pro crypto, because that's part of the bigger picture to keep the U.S. important. And when the British Empire collapsed, the center of the financial world still remained in a big way in London and Hong Kong, and of course Wall Street, which they ceded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when everything is going to pot, all the financiers will still be where they've been, right? And to a certain degree, Switzerland, I think Switzerland got taken down a notch during the Obama era by FATCA, but I don't know how big of a notch they were taken down. So the point here is that, I forget who said it. It's Mayor, is it Amschel Rothschild?
Yeah, Mayor Amschel Rothschild, correct.
Yeah, there's another one, control the coinage and control the courts and let the rabble have the rest. Similar to that, right? So there's a decent chance we can make it out of this okay, as long as, we are able to maintain a financial place in the world. And again, I don't think we're going to be the financial center, but I think we will continue to have some power. And of course, $500 trillion resources in this country, we'll be able to tap that in the future as soon as we cleave off the influence that brings us the EPA. Because I don't know if anybody knows the history of the EPA. But
no, no. Go ahead and break it down for us, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. This was created, I think it was during Nixon. So what happened was we went off the gold standard, and when we went off the gold standard, the reason we went off that is because France caught wise, and so they sent, I think it was a military boat over to the U.S. and said, we want our gold, we don't want dollars anymore. And then there was a confrontation, and France was sent home, as they always are. So when that happened, we needed to shore up our assurances to the rest of the world, right? The rest of the world, we owed them a bunch of money and debt, and they're not going to accept dollars, and they know gold is in short supply. The jig is up, and everybody wants to pretend because the system worked as well as it did. Everybody important, all the trillionaires and the billionaires were still making money on the system. They don't want that to go away, but they need something to fix it up. So there's the petrodollar. We know that history. The petrodollar was created to create demand for the dollar. However, how are we going to make whole all these people who were owed a lot of money? Well, we promised them the mineral wealth that was in the ground in the United States. So guess what else we did? Underneath, or on top of that mineral wealth, to make sure we could not extract it, the EPA was created around the same time, and that EPA created national monuments on top of these vast mineral wealth, like these key areas that are known to have mineral wealth. There happen to be these national monuments on top of it. We just simply can't access it.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting game, isn't it? Now we have to ask. Now Nixon, believe it or not, a lot of people didn't like him. That's fine. I think he is a bit of a misunderstood character in history. I also think that he may have done that to, I don't know, just to protect that mineral wealth, not necessarily from us getting it. And that might have been past his time that all this was done as well. It might have been, who was after Nixon? Was it Carter? I don't know. But it might have also been done to protect it from those people who actually would call in that debt. That's unknown. That's complete. Like, we don't know why. I'm just guessing. So anyway, that is, that's an interesting thing about the EPA and, the wealth that's underground. But at some point, if everything breaks down, then all those agreements will break down. And we don't even need the wealth that's underneath those monuments. I'm sure we have access to plenty of wealth that's not under those monuments that the EPA is, controlling as well. So yeah, I think we're going to be just fine. We gotta get rid of these people, and we got to do it in a way where they don't do anything crazy. And when, shoot, there were 2 fires lit right next to the Meta facility. Now, it's just interesting, and these were both last week
Hmm.
in the greater Boise, Idaho area. You got 2 fires lit there, and then you have a fire lit up in Coeur d'Alene for who knows why. Well, it could be like, hey, we'll start shooting your firemen around the meta facility. We'll let the meta facility burn down. Now you're messing with the real money. That's $1 billion facility, right? And I think there's a message being sent, possibly. Either that or it's just random fires and random psychos. I don't know. Hard to say. Excuse me. What did Peter Thiel say is pretty interesting this week?
Peter Thiel had a very interesting interview. Okay, and he was having an interview with I forgot what the person he was having the interview with, but the whole point is he was warning about one world government and greater threat. He was threats, and he was talking about Christianity and this, that, and the other, and how we need God. Now, this guy's look. Do I think Peter Thiel is a Christian? No. And there's this resurgence move among the technocrats to amalgamate some sort of veneer of Christianity. Is it to somehow they understand that having some sort of faith or religion is good for society, for civilization? That there's this hard swing back to the right because the left is just absolutely insane, and then in order to compete in a multipolar world exists only if you are somebody of that's kind of right leaning, that's kind of strong culturally. Are these guys doing that to bolster America's cultural awareness and identity? Maybe. But do I think for a second that this is genuine? No. Remember what I told you. And remember what Velas told you. Remember what Cowboys told you. Remember every guest we've ever had on tell you it's been one big theme. There are factions at war. There are no good guys and bad guys here. This is not a Marvel Comics movie. There are interests and various competing interests. Peter Thiel happens to belong to a group of people that are competing for that interest. Remember what I told you? Every single one of them. It's Murder on the Orient Express. Everybody wanted the guy dead. They all have their own methods to kill him. That's the Murder on the Orient Express. These guys, they all want the same thing: global control. And in some of their fever dreams, us, the population of schmoes, get to live. Others, we're all dead and slaves or replaced by robotics. So on and so forth. Insert dystopia here. With Thiel, and here's what he wrote. And here's what, again, this is from our boys over at Zero Hedge. In an interview talking about future and global risks, Thiel was raising alarms about nuclear war, climate change. I mean, think about all these dichotomies that don't make any fucking sense together. They're not even cogent. Climate change, bullshit. Artificial intelligence, overblown. Right? These guys are thinking, oh my God. Yeah, oh my God. Artificial intelligence. Nuclear war, not going to happen. But these are all buzzwords that the normies respond to. These are all buzzwords that trigger for the uninitiated. But being part of ESW Rogue, you are initiated. You're familiar with these themes. You know it's BS. You know it's a marketing buzzword. You know it's fear-mongering. You know it's to create fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD. These are FUD engines, FUD machines. But he also sees a more insidious danger than climate change. Oh my God, it's a more insidious danger than climate change. It's more insidious danger than climate change and nuclear war and all that. And that's a one-world totalitarian state. And he's speaking to a New York Times reporter named Ross Duhat or whatever. And he's warning about a centralized supranational government that could plunge humanity into authoritarianism. And what is this? Who's he shooting his shot against? Excuse me. Who is he shooting his shot against? Let's break it down. He's shooting his shot against the Davos crowd. You see, Thiel has his own visions of globalism. It's not a centralized power based in Europe that's running and calling the shot. It's not an unelected body. It is something to do with AI, something to do with transhumanism. You see, he's warning you about a centralized supranational national government that could plunge humanity into authoritarianism. But what he's selling you is a technocratic, AI-powered, transhumanist utopia. That's what he's selling you. It's global government, but in other terms. It's global government. It's governance where humanity is slowly replaced. There's a risk of nuclear war, environmental disasters, bioweapons, certain types of risks with AI. But there are solutions to these threats culminating in bad singularity, a one-world state that could stifle freedom under the guise of safety. All good things, all things to enervate the patriotic class, because they realize, you know, the private equity and vulture capitalism realize, hey, you know what? This whole leftism push, yeah, it's not working. That's why Pride Month got canceled. That's why there ain't no corporation doing any rainbow signs anymore. Because now they realize, oh, yeah, the strength is with us. They see that now very clearly. So they're saying things to soothe us. They're saying, oh, be afraid of the boogeyman of global government. Be afraid. And that is a bad thing. Davos is a terrible idea. But be careful what these guys are trying to sell you. The default political solution people have for all these existential risks is one world governance. Thiel observed, pointing to proposals for a strengthened United Nations to control nuclear arsenals or global compute governance to regulate AI development, include measures to log every single keystroke to prevent dangerous programming. Such solutions, the investor warned, risk creating surveillance state that sacrifices individual liberty for security. This is the guy who's pushing. This is the head of Palantir, folks. This is the head of Palantir warning you about a surveillance state. If this is not the fox in the henhouse, I do not know what is. I do not know what is. This is globalism light. This is New World Order Diet Coke version. It's the Coke Zero of the New World Order. New World Order is dead. We're entering the technocratic future. Here's a guy who's built a powerful company called Palantir, which is going to get all the defense contract for surveillance, warning you about the surveillance rate and the sacrifice of individual liberty for security. Is this a joke? Drawing on historical and philosophical analogies, Thiel referenced a 1940s Federation of American Scientists film, One World or None, which argued that only global governance could prevent nuclear annihilation. Think about that. Thiel juxtaposed this with a Christian theological framing. Look at that. Antichrist or Armageddon. Well, these are all things that the American evangelicals and the Christians here in this country understand. In both, the billionaires said he sees a binary choice between centralized control and catastrophic collapse. Yet Thiel questions the plausibility of a charismatic Antichrist figure seizing power through hypnotic rhetoric, as depicted in apocalyptic literature. Instead, he offered a modern twist. The path to global control lies in relentless fear-mongering about existential threats. The way the Antichrist would take over the world is you talk about Armageddon nonstop, Thiel explained. The billionaire contrasted this with earlier versions of scientific progress, like those in the 17th and 18th century. The Baconian science. Folks, remember these buzzwords. Francis Bacon? Come on. Do some research on who Francis Bacon, absolutely influential on early United States, absolutely influential to the founding fathers. Francis Bacon was a key architect of the birth of the New Atlantis, which is the United States of America. President Thiel argued that the greater political resonance lies in halting scientific advancement altogether. In our world, it's far more likely to be Greta Thunberg than Dr. Strangelove, he quipped, invoking the radical Swedish climate activist as a symbol of anti-progress sentiment. On AI specifically, Thiel struck a balanced tone, tempering both utopian and apocalyptic predictions. One question we can frame is just how big a thing do I think AI is, he asked himself. My stupid answer is it's more than a nothing burger and less than total transformation of our society. Thiel compared AI's potential to the internet of the late 90s, suggesting it could create some great companies and a few percentage points to the GDP, perhaps boosting growth by 1% annually for a decade or more. However, the billionaire expressed skepticism that AI alone could end economic stagnation, viewing it as a significant but not revolutionary force. While Thiel expressed nuanced views on artificial intelligence, his venture capital firm, follow the money. Don't listen to what these guys talk about. It means nothing. Look at where they put their money towards you. He's aggressively backing the technology, namely recently putting $600 million investment in Crusoe, a vertically integrated AI infrastructure provider. The biggest risk with AI is that we don't do enough. Crusoe is here to liberate us from the island of limited ambition, Thiel said. Listen to that. You see, folks, all these guys have their own brand of Globalism Incorporated. And in some of the brand, we die. Some of them we live. But we live a very limited life that is constantly, either picture, whether it's Davos or what these technocrats like Thiel are pushing out, in either scenario, you're being surveilled. In either scenario, your freedoms are limited. In either scenario, what you can do is greatly curtailed. In either scenario. Be careful what these guys are trying to sell you. Guy sitting on Palantir says AI could be a big nothing burger or it could be a radical transformation. I'm not exactly sure, but he pumps $600 billion into it. Sorry, $600 million into it. Like, it's unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable. And that's the whole danger in this thing. And that's one of the things I wanted to touch base upon. Cowboy, your thoughts, buddy?
Well, yeah, I think your warning is, if anything, understated, but no one's ever going to hear it. And the biggest reason they won't hear it is because of how the current population responds to death threats. And I actually have an example of that. So I got to stop sharing the screen and find a new screen. There's a really solid, very well documented example of how the current population, especially boomers, respond to death threats. So here it goes.
Well, Officer Swanson, you and your friends are dead. You're all dead.
Oh, good. He thinks we're zombies. He'll leave us alone.
Oh man. So I guess when it comes to things like Palantir, it's a tough call because about a year ago, maybe not even that, and I think we talked about this last show, but I was talking to my cousin who is a coder.
Yeah.
I was like, how realistic is it to like create a virtual, character that could be the spokesperson for, say, ALGO Factory? And he goes, it's not quite at the uncanny valley just yet. Right? And uncanny valley means like it's realistic. So, okay, so I kind of put that idea away. Well, that's like less than a year later. You can go on VO3 and you can make literally a 10-minute episode of whatever you want, or longer. I don't know. But I saw somebody took 3 days to make a 10-minute episode, basically a Black Mirror type episode. And it was as good as any Black Mirror. And if you didn't know it was AI, you'd have to have a pretty sharp eye to see it. So what was simply not anywhere near possible last year is now possible at the fingertips of everybody. And so I think he's downplaying AI. I think other people upplay AI. I think, some people think it's just going to all of a sudden be your new god and take over the world. And it already has taken over the world, and Skynet is, going to be hiding under your bed. I'm not saying that's not possible. I think that might be like more panic than reality, but I also think some people want to downplay it.
Yeah.
The simple thing to say is, you need at this point to use common sense, because you can't trust anything or that you see at all in the media. You're gonna have to try to put it together as best you can. And threat assessment and survival skills are a low in this society. How many people took the jab? Those people have no survival skills, right?
Yeah.
That's how the boomers respond to threats. They just like walk right into it. So yeah, you got to be careful what they're selling. We want to have some survival skills and discernment. And again, it's really difficult to know what's real and what's not. So that's pretty much all I got, though.
Very well said. Very well said. And with that being said, folks, we are at the end of the show. We'll be back tomorrow. And keep it locked on Little right here. Take it away, Cowboy.